Hey you awesome people, welcome to my channel. This is Sapta, and if you're here for the first time, this is the place where I help designers build and scale their career with tips, suggestions and tutorials. So if you're into it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Today in this episode, I'm going to teach you how to make this. This is a very cool looking animation in which the text appears as if someone is writing using a pen or handwriting or something like that. As a part of this animation, I'll also teach a new technique using which you'll be able to execute this. And in addition to that, many other cool stuff which you see around. Today I'm going to demonstrate it using my name, Sapta, but you can use it for any text. In fact, I've tried it for this text designer as well. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Here we are in After Effects, and let's go ahead and create a composition. To do that, I will click on this button here. I will select dimension of 1080 into 2400, a frame rate of 60. Resolution doesn't quite matter because it's just the resolution of the preview that you get to see while you're working on the animation, and it doesn't affect the quality of the final output. For duration, I will select 10 seconds, although ours is going to be around 5 seconds, but regardless, I'll just select 10. A background color of black is good enough. I'll give it a name of logo animation, and I'll go ahead and click OK. So here's my blank canvas, and as a first step, I'll go ahead and write the text that I wish to animate. And in this case, it's my name, Sapta, and you can feel free to use your name or any other word, your brand's name, whatever you wish to animate. And I'll ensure that it's in the center of the screen. I will make use of the align tools. I'll select the layer, align it vertically and horizontally with the artboard. Yeah, this is pretty much what I want. Now the nature of the animation or the nature of the effect is such that in my opinion, I feel it'll look best in a calligraphy or a handwriting font like something like this, in which the letters are connected. Of course, you can use it for other kinds of fonts as well, but in my opinion, this would look best in a font like this. Also, one thing to keep in mind is the strokes are very uniform. You wouldn't see the variation of strokes a lot. Of course, there is a bit because you can clearly see this is thicker than this. But overall, it's still within acceptable limits, and that's an important thing to consider because the technique that we are going to use today might affect the output if the strokes are not comparable. The font that I have used today is called Amplify, and I have the license only for personal use. It's the free one. If you want to use it for commercial purposes, you'll have to get the complete license and pay for it. For now, I will keep the link of the free license in the description so that you can use the same one if you want. I'll go ahead and add a lock to this layer because we're not going to use this text layer right away. Before we start, there is one small thing that you need to know. It's a prerequisite that you would need to understand before you learn to do this animation, and that is a new technique which is called trim paths. Let me show you what that is. For that, let me just grab the pen tool and draw a shape, a path, something like this. Something a little curvy, something like a sine wave or something. So, it has a stroke as well. Now, this is the path and it has a stroke of 16 dp around it. Now, if you expand this layer and you see, there's this button called Add. This thing is there in every layer. You might have ignored it till now, but today we are going to use it. So in this shape layer, if you click on Add, you will see a host of options, but most importantly, you see this thing called Trim Paths. This is what we are going to add today. So I'll go ahead and click on Trim Paths, and it adds this Trim Path row under the drop-down Contents. If I further open Trim Paths, you will see it has three options: Start, End, and Offset. And also it has something called Trim Multiple Shapes. We'll get to that later. The way it works is, for start and end, it has percentages, and when you change these percentages, you see how the path is trimming along the trajectory. And you can also animate them. For example, I can add a keyframe for end, move a couple of frames ahead, add another keyframe, and maybe set this thing to 10% or something like that. And now if I go ahead and play, you see, this is what trim path does. I can do it from the other end as well. I can animate start as well, or I could animate start as well as end together. Let me go ahead and remove this thing and let me show you one more thing. I can also set 0% for start and around say 10% for end. And now with this offset, if I change the angle, you see I can grab a section of this entire path and move it along the path or the trajectory of that path itself. So these are some cool things that you can do using trim paths. And today for this animation, we are going to use the same technique. So let me go ahead and delete this shape layer because that was just for demonstration. Here we have our text layer. As a first step, what we are going to do is we're going to draw a path around this text. But don't worry, it might sound tedious, but we don't have to make it absolutely perfect. A rough path around the text is good enough. Using the pen tool, I will start drawing a path around this text. And when I do it, I will ensure that I'm drawing the path in the same way, in the same direction as one would if they were writing using a pen and paper using their hand. For example, to write S, you would go this way and then you will come back like this and then you would go like this and then, go on. So on and so forth, the way you write. So we'll follow the exact same path when I'm tracing this. I will start from this place and try and roughly draw a path around it. And I'll also ensure that the thickness of the stroke that I'm using is roughly the same as the thickness of the font that I have used here. It doesn't have to be perfect right away because we will work on it later. Actually, even for the whole thing, it doesn't need to be very perfect. As long as it just covers it and it just ensures a few things are in place, I think we are good enough. Okay, now in this stage, we are done with the S and we are done one half of A. Now as a next step, this should come like this if I were to trace the exact handwriting. But if I do this, it'll just repeat this path because this is already created. So what I will do is I will deselect this and I will create a new path starting here. So it goes like this and the next step kind of starts from here. And to do that, I can just deselect by clicking anywhere outside in any of the windows and then select the pen tool again and start drawing another path. The moment you do this, you will see we have created a new layer called Shape Layer 2 with this path in it. Now this is also fine, but if I were to create this, I'll probably need some 7 or 8 shapes and then I will have 7 and 8 layers here. Which works, but then it just creates confusion because there are so many extra layers out here. So what I will do is I will delete this and I will bring all these shapes inside one single shape layer. To do that, all that I'll have to do is before I start drawing, I'll have to select this layer. I'll start drawing the new shape from somewhere here. And now if you expand this under contents, you'll see there are 2 shapes right now. Shape 1 is the first one and the shape 2 is the second one. So instead of going it on a different layer, everything is cascaded inside single layer. And we just need to continue doing that. Select outside to deselect, click the layer, hold the pen tool and keep drawing. Anywhere where you see an overlap is likely to happen, just cut it off and then create a new shape inside the same layer. I will speed this section up because there is nothing special which is happening. Using the pen tool is just like it is in any other tool. Here I have my rough shapes ready. Now this looks very ugly because I have roughly drawn them and I've created 8 shapes inside the same layer to cover up this entire thing. Now I'll revisit it once again and just make sure that they're a little better than what it is now. So the final aim is to cover every white section that you see here so that it covers the entire text that we have underneath it. And we'll do one shape at a time. And to do that, just select on the shape, and in case you do not see a handle, well, I'm seeing here, I can directly pull it. In case you do not see, all that you'll have to do is just expand it and click on this path and then you will start seeing this. So just move these things around, move the handles and make sure that they are just around in the same way you would want it. Now in this regard, there are 2 things that we can turn on. So, go inside stroke and you would see something called cap and join. So line cap and line join, change both of them to round cap and round join. So this will give us this, rounded corners whenever there is a corner and whenever there is a join. But this needs to be done for every shape. Right now I've done it for shape 1. I'll have to do it for every other shape as well, because you see this is not rounded, this is not rounded. So we'll have to individually do it for all of them. And this step is again very straightforward. You just, make a little more adjustments to make sure that it fits better. And in this regard, if you feel a certain shape can be thicker and thinner, you can do that as well. You can always go and change the stroke width out here so as to it fits the need for that particular shape. So all these things can have individual widths. It also gives us a little more flexibility to work around and cover the entire thing or finally. I'll again speed this up because it's again straightforward. So here we are after some quick adjustments. I made it slightly better than it was before. I've also made all the corners rounded from the stroke panel and by changing the line cap and the line join to both round join and round cap. And I've also increased the thickness of some of these individual ones to match up with the text which is right under it. For example, this is 28, this is 30, and I just randomly felt whatever would fit. And I just made those changes that way. Essentially, there's nothing new that I've done here. I've just thickened the stroke or just moved them around a bit so that it covers the text a little better. So this is the first level of cleanup that we have done. Now do not worry about the cross stroke of the T. That's going to come later because it's pretty simple. Now, we are going to add a trim path to this shape layer 1. So I will select this, go to add and trim path. And here's my trim path. I will expand the trim path. I will just expand it a bit so that you see what is happening. And while my handle is here in the 0 position, yes, we can start from 0 in this case. I'll add a keyframe for end. We'll move 80 frames ahead. I'll press and hold Command and Shift on my keyboard and press the right keyboard button 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So here. And this is where I'm going to add another keyframe for end. Now for the initial one, I will make it 0. So now you see, all of them are individually happening at their own places. This is not what we want. To fix that, there's a simple solution. You see there's trim multiple shapes, and then the drop down, it says simultaneously. We just need to change it to individually. And now it is working, but the only problem is it is working from back. So, it is first doing it to shape 8, then shape 7, shape 6, shape 5, and so on. And one simple way is to just change the order. So I want it to happen to shape 1 first. So I will just drag and bring them here. Then to shape 2. Then to shape 3. So here I have reordered all the shapes. And now if you see, it is working just like the way I would want them. But this is not how we are going to keep it. So I'll just hit U on the keyboard so that I see only these 2 keyframes. I'll quickly go ahead and ease them. I'll select this first keyframe and go to my Motion 2 plugin and give it an influence of the outgoing velocity of 40% using the first slider. And for the ending keyframe, I'll give it an influence of 80% for the incoming velocity using this last slider. In case you do not have this plugin, this is an external plugin of After Effects which I have. If you do not have it, you can also do it the conventional way by selecting this keyframe, by right-clicking on them, keyframe velocity, and you see influence of incoming velocity is 80%, which is nothing but what I have done it using this slider. It's just a shortcut panel, so you can do it the conventional way as well. Now if I go ahead and play, the easing looks fine. Now what I'll do is, I'll not use this shape layer just like this. I will use this as a mask for the text layer. And to do that, I will select this text layer. Now I'll unlock it because this is where the work comes in. I will select this layer Sapta and I will go to track matte, which is here. By default, it is none. I will drop down and I will select alpha matte shape layer 1. I'll click on this. So this shape layer 1 is nothing but the layer which is right above the top. If you want to know more about masks, I have a dedicated video for the same. I will leave it linked in the description and also on the top right corner of the screen under the info button. So the moment I add it as a mask, you see, we kind of get the effect that we wanted. But there are some adjustments that needs to be done. You see, there are these corners which are not perfect yet. So now what we need to do is this shape, it still is a path, all the paths that we had inside. It's just that it's a mask right now and hence it's invisible. So we will right now see it in context and fix these imperfections, this corner and these corners and so on. So it is again nothing different. You just have to select it and make some slight changes out there so that you stop seeing those rough edges. You see, I just moved around a bit and this one is gone right now. Similarly, I will do it for all the places wherever I see any kind of discrepancies. I see something here, so I'll just move it around a little bit so that it starts looking smooth again. It is just about I might have misplaced it, and as things appear it just starts looking a little odd. So it's nothing but just making the shapes, moving around the shapes or playing around with the shapes a bit so that it fits your need a little better. I'll speed this part a bit. Alright, so I moved things around a little bit more and now I think it's within the acceptable limits. You see, it's not perfect yet. You still see some jagged lines here and there, but it's totally fine. Well, honestly, imperfection totally works in this case because you're going to see it for a very short time. So, it's going to happen. Everything is going to happen in just 1 second, and not just this, we are going to do many other things to it. So almost all the imperfections that we have left will be imperceivable. Okay. So here we have the first layer, the white one, which is already ready. This is what it is. Let us still not worry about the cross stroke because I'm going to bring it later. Okay. First, let us make it a little more interesting. So this is my text. I'll name it Sapta White. And this is nothing but the mask. And this is masked for the white one. So this is Sapta White and mask white. This is one pair. I'll make a copy of this by selecting both of them and hitting Command and D on the keyboard. So it makes a copy of both of them. I'll bring the new one to the bottom and I will rename them to Sapta Pink and Mask Pink. And the moment I do that, I will also have to change the color of this to pink. So I'll go to character and I will find a very bright shade of pink, something that would look good on this black background. I think this pink is good enough. I'll go ahead and click OK. So this is my pink right now. Now I'll make a copy once again. I will select these two, any of these two actually. Do a Command D once again to copy both of them. I'll bring them to the bottom and I will rename them to Sapta Purple and Mask Purple. And of course, I will change the color of these to a shade of purple, which is nothing but this. I'll go ahead and click OK. Now when I hit U on the keyboard, you'll see all my keyframes are retained. But when I play, I just see white. The reason being the white one is at the top and everything is right under it. For us to see the others, all that you'll have to do is just offset them. I will keep the purple the way it is. I'll select these two, the pink and the purple. I'll press and hold Option on the keyboard and hit the right keyboard button 4 times to move them ahead by 4 frames. Now I'll deselect all of them, select only the pink and move it ahead by another 4 frames. And to do that, I'll press and hold Option and hit the right keyboard button 1, 2, 3 and 4 times. Now when I go ahead and play, you see a much more interesting effect is happening. This is pretty much what we wanted. Now this is the time when we go ahead and make this line here for T. Now to do that, I don't have to go through mask and all because it's a simple line. I will just grab the pen tool and draw a straight line like this. Yeah. So, and of course I don't want it to be pink. I want it to be white and I will kind of match the thickness of it with this T out here. So I think 26 is a little too much. Maybe 23 is good enough. And I will also make the corners rounded. And to do that, I will just open the drop down, go to shape, stroke, and the line cap. I'll make it round cap. There are no joints here, so it doesn't matter. So you see this is right now rounded. And I want it to appear right when, this is ending. This is where I want this thing to appear. So to do that, I will add another trim path to this. Let's name it T for now. I will go to the drop down, click on this add a trim path to it, and this trim path appears. I will animate the end of trim path. I will click on this stopwatch to add a keyframe. Now I'll move a couple of frames ahead, 30 frames ahead. Command and Shift, and I'll hit the right keyboard button 3 times. And while I'm here, I'll add one more keyframe. I'll go back to the initial position. I will set the end value to 0. And now when you see, it animates just like the way you would want it. I'll go ahead and press U on the keyboard so that I see only the things which matter to me. And I will just ease this one and give it an influence of 80% for the incoming velocity. And I will leave this one just like the way it is. I'll go ahead and play it once. Yeah, I think it's fine, but it needs to appear a little early. So I will just move it. I'll move it behind by 20 frames. I'll press and hold Option and Shift and press the left keyboard button 2 times. Now let's see how it looks. Yeah, I think this is fine. Okay, this looks perfect. Now it's time to add some magic to it. And how we do that? It's very simple. All those electrifying and those thin lines of neon blue that you saw in the animation, we are going to create them. And you won't believe they are a lot easier to make than it seemed. So to do that, I will simply copy any of the masks, any one of them. I'll take this, I'll press Command and D, and I have a copy of this. And I'm going to name it Magic. Magic. Let's call it Magic 1 because I'm going to add 2 kinds of magic. And when I hit U on the keyboard, you will see these keyframes that I had already added to the mask. I don't need them right now, so I know I'll just go ahead and delete them. And right now, I will of course make it visible. And this is a thick pink right now. I don't need it thick. I need it really thin. In fact, I'll make it 2 or something. And for the color, instead of this, I will select that neon blue that you had seen. Something which is really bright, something which will stand out on this black. Okay? Now we are going to add some offset to it. So I don't want the entire line here. I just need one section of the line and I want that to keep moving along that path. Remember, I demonstrated in the beginning of the session today. So I will go to Trim Paths and start as 0%. For end, I will make it around 10%. When I do it, this is the length that we get. I think we can make it slightly shorter. I'll make it 7%. So it is even shorter. And now I'll animate the offset. So I'll take the handle all the way to the beginning. I will set a keyframe for offset. Then I will come, to end wherever this last keyframe of this mask white is ending, somewhere here. Add another keyframe. And I'll go back to this. This is already 0. And for the ending one, I will give it an angle of 360 degrees. So the way it works is 360 degrees covers one complete cycle over the length of the path that you have drawn. So if you want it to cover across the entire path, I need to give it an angle of 360, and that's what I had given here. And as you know, in After Effects, 360 is equivalent to one complete cycle, so it makes it 1x plus 0, which is nothing but 360. So if I go back and play once again, you see what is happening? But it's happening right in the middle of the text. I don't want it that way. So what I will do, I will select Magic and I will move it somewhere here. Towards the top left. I'll keep it somewhere here. And now if I hit U, I'll also add the same amount of easing. Actually, I will leave the first keyframe. To the end keyframe, I'll add an influence of 80% for the incoming velocity. And now when I go and play it, it's nice, but it's going a little faster. So I will delay it a bit. So this initial keyframe, I'll move it to the right by around 10 frames. So to do that, I'll press and hold Option and Shift on the keyboard and hit the right keyboard button once. I think that is much better. think that looks good. What I'll do is instead of 2, I'll make it 3. I think 3 should be good enough. Yep, I think that is good. But you see, when this ends here, I also see it again reappearing because, 360, as it completes one cycle, it again comes back to the initial position out here. So we don't want it here this way. So simple way to make it disappear is to use an opacity. You can make the opacity of the 0. But we will use a new technique that we have learned today. We'll disappear it using trim paths again. So I will expand this magic 1. And this time I will add a start and an end keyframe here. I'll hit U on the keyboard so that you see it here. And now I'll move 20 frames ahead. And to do that, I'll press and hold Command and Shift on the keyboard and hit the right keyboard button twice. So that moves the handle 20 frames. I'll add another start and end keyframe. And this time I will make the start 7, which is nothing but the same as the end. The way it works is when these numbers are equal, you won't see anything. Okay, and this is what we are going to take advantage of. You see, while this animates, it goes and disappears. That's it. And I will ease this and give it an 80%, the same thing that I have been giving. So this way, it starts and it also disappears at the end. Right? I'll actually move it behind by 10 frames. So I'll select all of these. Press and hold Option and Shift on the keyboard and hit the left keyboard button once to move it by 10 frames. And now, yep, you see it nicely disappears. Yep, this is exactly what we wanted. Awesome. Now we'll add one more magic, and this magic is nothing but just another shape essentially. So I will draw a simple sine wave sort of thing, something, something like this. Let's just draw and we can tweak it later. Yep, something like this, I guess. I can just move it and make sure that it ends somewhere here. And yep, and maybe we don't need it all the way this way. It can be something like this. A nice sine wave, so it can go all over the text and just cover it. Yep, and for this one, I want to give it a shape of pink. I'll call it Magic 2. And to do this, I will give it a shade of pink. You can pick the same color that you had given for the text underneath. I'll will pick one more color. Even this has the same 3 pixels as width. And I will give it the same trim path that I had given to the other one. And that is to Magic 1. And one simple way to do it and also make it disappear just like this is to select all of these from Magic 1, do a Command C, select Magic 2, do a Command V. And now it actually got pasted. If I go ahead and hit U, you will see the same keyframes. You'll see the same keyframes are here as well. You see, it's actually working the way we wanted it. But then again, we don't want it to start right away. We want it to start a little later. Maybe somewhere here. And I also want, in this case, for Magic 2 alone, give this an influence for the outgoing velocity as well. I will select this and give it an influence of 40%. Just for this one. Magic 2 can continue to remain the way it is. Because this is anyways an offsetted thing. It's not a part of the text anyways. If I just go ahead and preview it once. Yep, I think that looks good. But I feel the entire thing, all the keyframes that you see here, the entire animation can be a tad bit slower. So to do that, I will select all these end keyframes, which are there at the end. I'll select all of them, press and hold Option and Shift, and move them, all of them, to the right by 10 frames. And to do that, press and hold Option and Shift and hit the right keyboard button once. So that slows down because I kind of increase the duration between them, right? Let's go ahead and see a preview. I think this looks good. One more thing that I see here is before starting, I still see these two magics which I had created. And to get rid of them, I just have to do the same thing what I have done here to make them disappear. I will just make them appear in the same way. So I will add a keyframe. Let's do it for Magic 2 first. I'll add a keyframe for start and end. And then I'll move 20 frames ahead. And here I'll add another 2 set of keyframes and go back to the initial ones. And I will make the end, which is 7%, I'll make that 0. So what it does, and of course I will ease them and give it an 80% to the final ones. So just before it starts, it grows to that point and then the offset kicks in and it just moves around. And just before the offset ends, it disappears again using the end and the start animations. Simple as that. And we'll do it for the first one, our magic one as well. I'll add keyframes for start and end. And I'll move 20 frames ahead. And I'll again add keyframes for start and end. I'll go back to the initial ones. And if you see in an initial one, the end is 7, I'll make that 0. And that should take care of whatever we wanted. Similarly, I will select them, give it an easing of 80%. Yep. So the magics also appear. They go through the entire text. And after it ends, they nicely disappear, revealing the entire logo. I think we are done. This looks awesome. Now all that we need is just animate it to the top after the animation is done and bring some sample UI, whatever you have with you. And that should be all. And to do that, I can keep logo animation the way it is. I can create a new composition by hitting Command and N of the same size, 1080, 2400, 60, 10 seconds. I go ahead and click OK. And I will give it a name of 00 main. Because this is where I'm going to compose my whole thing. So, I will drag and bring it to the front because this is higher in the hierarchy. So I'll bring my logo animation. I'll drag and drop this logo animation here. So this is my logo animation. It's getting over at around 2 seconds. And at around 2 seconds or so, I'm going to move it all the way to the up. And to do that, I will add a keyframe of position. I'll hit P on the keyboard and add a position keyframe, and I'll also add a scale keyframe. And to do that, I'll press and hold Shift on the keyboard and hit S to reveal scale. I'll add a keyframe, move 50 frames ahead. To do that, I will press and hold Command and Shift on the keyboard and hit the right keyboard button 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 times. And then I add these 2 keyframes here as well. In the final stage, I want this to go up somewhere here, like the header of an app. And I'll also scale it down to maybe around 60%. Let's see how it looks. Or maybe 50%. Yeah, I think 50 would be good enough. Yep, and I keep it somewhere here. And I use the same easing values. For the outgoing velocity, I'll add an influence of 40%. For the incoming velocity, I'll add an influence of 80%. And this is how it goes. Then we also get a sample UI so that, it just looks in place. I'll double click on this project panel and I'll navigate to the place where my assets are. In this case, I just have 3 things, one background, one bottom sheet and one call to action. I'll select all of them and click and hit open. Now this is a very random one. I will just drag and drop all of them here. Of course, under this, my background remains at the bottom, my bottom sheet right after that, and I'll align it to the bottom like this. And my call to action, I want it floating somewhere here. This is just a sample app in case I ever create an app for my podcasts. By the way, I don't have a podcast yet, but if I do, maybe the app might look something like this. This is something that I quickly just made up. So in the final stage, this is how I would want it to be. And I think the logo can go a little up. So while my handle is in the final position of this, I will take it a little up so that it's kind of centered with this hamburger and the search. So I think, this is good. And while this is going, while the logo is going from the center to the top, I would also want to animate this UI and make them appear in a certain way. And most notably, I would change these 3 things, their position and their opacity. So I will select all 3 of them together, hit P on my keyboard. It reveals the position of all 3 of them. I will click on this stopwatch, add a keyframe for all of them. Go to the end state, that is the same stage where this logo animation is ending. Add another set of keyframes. Now I'll press and hold Shift and hit T on the keyboard to reveal opacity and also not hide position, which we have just added. I'll add the respective opacity keyframes, go back to the initial stage, add the respective opacity keyframes for the initial stage here as well. And now while we are here, I will change the position. For the background, for the bottom sheet as well as the CTA, I'll bring all of them a little down. Yup, maybe somewhere here. And while they are here, I'll also bring some relative position changes here. So, I'll select only the bottom sheet now and I'll bring it further down. And I will hit the CTA and I'll bring it even further down, somewhere here. Somewhere here. And now while these are here, I will select all of them and set the opacity of all of them to 0. Yeah, this is how it is, and I will add the same easing values for the initial ones, an influence of 40% for the outgoing velocity, and for all the final ones, an influence of 80% for all the incoming velocities. Now when I go ahead and play them, looks fine. I think some minor adjustments that I can make. I feel the background should be a little more at the bottom when it starts. So I'll pick this background. Background is nothing but the one in which there was a photo of me wearing the headphones. So, yep. I think this is fine. Just one small thing here. I feel that when it appears, I don't like this section where, this button is appearing and I get to see this line, the edge of this thing. So one way to fix that is I take the CTA and instead of the opacity changing all over this entire duration, I can reduce the duration of the opacity by maybe around 10 or 20 frames. So I will select only this keyframe, press and hold Option and Shift and hit the left keyboard button once, twice, twice maybe by 20 frames. And now when I go ahead and play, you see by the time this button crosses the border of the half card, it's already at a full opacity. So I don't see that edge that I was seeing before. So I think that's a quick fix. So if I go ahead and play, I think that looks fine. Let's play the whole thing. I will chop the animation somewhere here in 4 seconds. So I'll bring my handle to 4 seconds. Roughly around 4 seconds. And I will hit N on the keyboard to chop the entire composition. Now I take my handle all the way to 0 and play it. I think this looks good. If I just zoom it in for you, so that's it, my friends. I hope you learned something new today. If you try this out, please drop it on the social media and don't forget to tag me. The handles are right there in the description. I hope you enjoyed doing this as much as I enjoyed teaching this. If you like this video, like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. This is Sapta. See you guys in the next one.